Inflation is on the rise, but experts are now also saying that the next threat we should be prepared for is deflation. Yeah, we're just getting it every which way, are we not? Joining me now to break this all down is Rebecca Walser, president of Walser Wealth Management and author of Wealth Unbroken, Growing Wealth Uninterrupted by Market Crashes, Taxes, and Even Death. It's powerful. Rebecca, thanks so much for joining me. So deflation, I mean, I'm thinking back to my Econ 101 days. I went into political science and journalism, but I mean, this ultimately, it's actually, from what I understand, this is worse than inflation because this is signaling a recession. I mean, the pendulum can swing both ways, and this can really sink demand. It's bad news. Where's the first sector or the first area of the market in which we see something like this? Like, if the average person, if they're, just kind of watching stuff casually, what should be kind of like the first sign that they're looking out for that things are about ready to get bumpy?
Yeah. I don't know, Dana, that I agree with these experts that are saying deflation is really coming. What you really see is that we obviously went through coronavirus last year, and we had three legislative acts that really dealt with that. So first the CARES Act, then the HEROES Act, and then this ARP Act that this new administration signed this past March. And so we really pumped in about $6 trillion of stimulus to deal with the fact that we voluntarily, for the first time in the history of the world, quarantined healthy people and shut down economies worldwide. And then you also had at the same time the Federal Reserve pumping in a substantial amount of stimulus as well. And they're still doing that to the tune of about $120 billion a month right now. So that's 1.3 billion, or trillion rather, per year. And so what happened was interest rates went up, and really specifically in March, we got to about almost a 1.8% 10-year yield. It was just under 1.8, 1.753, something around there. And so that is definitely inflationary, and we definitely see consumer price index go up. We saw the PPI and the PMI, all of these things that track inflation, go up. But then what happened was, in the last few months, the Federal Reserve has started to indicate just very lightly that they might do something about it. They started saying that in 2023, they could see 2 rate hikes. Now, I don't know about you, Dana, but that's a long time from now. Under really normal monetary policy, we wouldn't think that that was even really an announcement. Recently, they just said, as recently as last week, that they would look at tapering stimulus in next month in August in Jackson Hole, that they would discuss it next month. We're not talking about tapering anytime soon. So what's happened is the yield, because now the Fed has been open to discussing, rate hikes and stimulus tapering, that has sent a message saying that the Fed Reserve is not comfortable with the inflation that we've seen, and that they might do things to pull back. And so what you saw was that the 10-year yield go from the 1.75 high to now 1.337 is where we are approximately right now in July. And so that's why you have economists saying, oh, well, wait a minute, if we can shift so fast downward, we could be looking at deflation. But I think that we're still literally going to be dealing with inflation, because you cannot pump in $8 trillion in 15 months and think that you're not going to have true long-term inflationary pressure. I know that the Fed is saying that it's temporary, but I'm not seeing that, and so we'll see. And I am happy that they're talking about maybe tapering and maybe interest rate hikes, because we need to know that they're not just going to be comfortable with a 3% year-over-year, adjustment upwards.
Right, and I'm so glad that you said that, and I think you made a really good point, because there were a couple of pieces that I'm looking at and I'm reading, and I'm thinking that just seems so crazy, because we did just spend all this money, and can it really go that quickly the other way? And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, now we got to worry about a recession, and what else are we going to have to worry about? I mean, we couldn't get enough people in the workforce, and we couldn't get goods because we didn't have enough people to turn it out. Now we're not even going to have demand. I mean, it seems like a lot of drama, to be honest. It just seems like drama.
It is. I think I agree. Totally.
My goodness. So this, and with inflation, and now this is something that we've been hearing for quite some time, that it's going to, when they say that this is going to stay on for a while, like, what are their estimates? Like, how long are we going to be dealing with this? I mean, I'm just like thinking ahead to midterms, and I'm thinking everything else, because the economy, I would think that certain people in government would want this resolved a lot faster than normal, just because we have, elections that are going to be coming up, and people vote their wallets, they vote their bank accounts, their savings, the economy.
Yeah, I think you're already starting to see that with people that are running for midterms starting to talk and rewrite history about who was calling for defunding of the police. So I think right now they're really on more on political messages. But for sure, the Federal Reserve is aware that there is a midterm. And like I said, they've given us little nuggets of caution to say, hey, we know we're not in a crazy cloud up here in a bubble where we're not recognizing that there is inflation. I mean, literally, if you look at the consumer, and people don't understand this, Dana, but the core CPI number excludes food and energy. So those are our two most volatile inflationary things that we buy every day: gas to get to the office, or if you're still going, food to feed our family. And so they intentionally exclude the two most inflationary items in a human, American's budget. And so when we're looking at core CPI that doesn't have those two components, and it is at a year-over-year increase as of May of 3.4%, the Fed is going to say, wow, this is something that's troubling. So I think that their first indication, let us know that they are on top of this, is stating that they would basically be interested in potentially 2 rate hikes as early as 2023. Now, if you're in the real world of finance, you think 2023 is like literally, we can't even possibly imagine the kind of market that we'll have in 2023 when we're literally in the first half at the time of 2021. But it does allow people to know that the Fed is not going to be as accommodative as maybe they had otherwise thought. And inflation is an issue. And it is just common sense. If just to talk to the users and who maybe don't have economic classes back in their background, just think about this. The value of a dollar comes from its scarcity. If you pump in 8 trillion more of them, that means the ones that existed before the 8 trillion new ones got pumped in are worth less. They're not worthless, but they are worth less than they were before that $8 trillion got pumped in, because we only have one American dollar supply, right? And it's the world's reserve currency. So you pump in $8 trillion in 15 months and you're going to get inflation. It is just an economic fact.
Goodness. I hope that we don't see any more government spending, any more money pumped in. And then last question for you, Rebecca, the tax hikes. That's the other thing that we keep hearing, in conjunction with this $6 trillion asked for in the first 100 days. Now we're hearing, well, we might have to raise people's taxes to an ungodly amount, including capital gains tax. And I just keep thinking of all the seed money for startups out there, because we need more. I mean, that's where our engine for job creations comes from. How is that? Tell people. I mean, to me, I know enough to just go immediately and think, oh my gosh, the world's ending. Put this in perspective, though, of someone who has this background. What does that mean for all of this in long term, if those tax cuts or tax hikes rather go through?
Yeah, this is a huge topic, Dana. I'm a tax attorney, and this is a passion of mine. And I have to be honest, I have never seen an administration in such a short amount of time come in and talk total new tax policy. But not only that, actually use their Secretary of Treasury to go globally and try to work out a G7, G20, and 130 plus country resolution to keep a minimum base level of corporate taxation in the world, so that we no longer actually can have tax arbitrage. In other words, if you think that with this administration raising corporate tax rates to X level, and you think you're going to deal with that by just leaving and repatriating under a different foreign country for tax arbitrage purposes, that's not going to happen, because we've already gone to the world and negotiated a global minimum corporate tax. That's what we're seeing here. This is the first parlay of the U.S. government into global tax policy that I've ever seen in my lifetime, and I'm a tax attorney.